go, put the lid on. So we just did a engine swap for a fella. Unfortunately this 4J's blown up. The swirl flap screws come out and gone through the motor, so he's going to do a quick teardown and see exactly how much damage has been done, see if the engine's still usable or not. So stay tuned, Gilly's going to rip it apart now. So here we're just checking the front timing case, just showing Gilly how to remove the front cases themselves from around the timing gears. Gilly's pulling off the EGR cooler. You've got to be really careful here with the T-pieces on top of the injectors that I use as a fuel return. So you make sure before you pull the hoses off themselves, you just give them a twist left to right and pull the fuel hoses off. Some people like to pull the T-pieces off at the same time. I prefer not to, because I've just seen in the past that you can break them. And he's ripping the rocker cover off here. There's a nut at the front, the rest of them are bolts. You can see that front little case there, which is what the cam angle sensor sits on. It's got a little bit of a lip that you can get in behind and pry out. They've just got a little bit of sealant on them. And just got to be careful, same as with the rocker cover, you've got to be careful that you don't lever off anything that is fragile or any of your plugs or cables when you're pulling them off. You can see Gilly here, this is his first 4J disassembly, so just checking out the timing chain itself to see how that gets removed, see whether or not it can come up with the engine, with the head I should say. And he's just taking the front gear and the nut off the fuel pump itself. There's a little sprocket on there, you pull that sprocket off and that frees up your timing chain. So you can see here, Gilly's just disconnecting the timing chain from the front of the motor around the gears. And the fuel pump has a little sprocket on the front of that, so once you get the nut off, you can move the sprocket, get the chain off. And there's also a guide inside that you can remove as well, which makes it a little bit easier to get it off. These cams are also act as scissor gears, so the front of the cams themselves, they have a little hole because they have preload on the gears themselves. So to keep them in that preload position, you can actually put a little screw in the front of the cam there itself where the gear meets up, and that stops them from springing back, so you can put them back in place. See here, Gilly's taking the cams themselves off. We're actually going to replace the gears on the front of this one, so we haven't bothered with the retain bolt for the scissor gears. And he's just taking those front head bolts off. Probably should be using an extension there. That's the coolant pipe there from the head of the block. And he's taking the first row of head bolts out there. And he's just removing that tensioner from around the timing chain there. Just ripping those head bolts out there. Sometimes you'll notice that they are quite burnt smelling, a bit of confusion. You can see here, Gilly's a little bit confused because this is his first time ripping the head off. We sort of threw him in the deep end to see how it would go. I was busy with other stuff, so he hasn't quite noticed yet why the head won't come off.
Gotta pull the lifters out too. Fucking, I was like, yeah, because there's a bolt under them, right there. What a fucking dog, man.
And you have to remove the injectors and the rocker arms to pull the rest of the head bolts out. Just hiding there underneath the rocker rollers. So the injectors are coming out there. You've got to make sure that you don't accidentally leave the washers in the head when you're pulling them apart. It's not uncommon to see cars coming in, running poorly after a set of injectors have been done, and someone's accidentally double stacked washers. So Gilly's just removing the rocker arms now. You can see he's cracking all those bolts there with a breaker bar and not using a rattle gun, because those Allen key sockets tend to do a little bit of damage if you just send the rattle gun on them. It's good practice as well to try and remove things or crack the bolts at the very least with a breaker bar before using a rattle gun, especially if they are bolts that you have to reuse. And I've come back into the picture here to supervise, obviously. Just inspecting here inside the head. It actually looked like this engine had been looked after pretty well. Unfortunately, just those swirl flap screws had gone through and done a bit of damage. Completely preventable damage, unfortunately. Isuzu leaves them in.
Oh no, I'll have to put that down.
You should always make sure that you have somewhere ready to put the head before you take the head off. Bit of poor preparation. Gear laying everywhere at the moment, too many engines sitting apart. Give it a look. Got that torch.
Oh yeah, torch.
Can't see it cracked.
What, that oil? So
maybe. Get a rag and clean it out. Why does this phone always ring? So as you can probably gather, we just pulled that down to see exactly what happened. Basically, we've just had an order for an engine rebuild, so we're going to recode that one and put it all together and send it out to a customer. He's going to send his one back, so we can rebuild that too. So hopefully we get a little bit of footage and we can chuck that in the next video for you. But if you have any questions or want to know pricing for anything, just send us a message. Doesn't matter if it's on text message, bloody Instagram, Facebook, whatever. Thanks, mate. See ya.
I was like, damn, fucking insane.